It often begins quietly. A glance held a second too long. A name that feels warmer in the mind than it should. Before logic arrives, before intention forms, something inside has already leaned forward. The heart may take the blame, but the truth is more subtle. Somewhere beneath awareness, the brain has started to recognize a pattern it knows too well. Familiar tones of voice, a rhythm of attention, a feeling that echoes something old. A crush is rarely random. It feels spontaneous, yet it follows invisible rules written long before the moment you notice them. Memory, emotion, chemistry, and longing move together in silence, choosing for you before you believe you have chosen at all. This is not a story about love. It is a story about recognition. A crush rarely announces itself loudly. It does not ask permission. It simply appears, already formed, like a thought that feels older than the moment it arrived. At first, it feels like attention narrowing. Out of a crowded room, one presence becomes sharper. Their voice carries weight. Their absence feels noticeable. Nothing significant has happened yet, but something inside has already begun to lean toward them. This is not desire in its dramatic form. It is recognition, quiet, subtle, almost instinctive. The brain is constantly scanning. Faces, tones, expressions, energy. Most pass through unnoticed. But sometimes, a person fits into an emotional outline already stored deep within memory. The brain does not label it as familiarity. It labels it as interest, as curiosity, as chemistry, and so the feeling feels new even though it is built from something old. A crush feels sudden because awareness arrives late. By the time it is noticed, the brain has already connected dots beneath consciousness. Micro-expressions that feel safe. Emotional cues that feel understandable. A sense of being seen or wanting to be seen by this particular person. This is why a crush feels personal. It feels meaningful almost immediately. Not because the person has earned that significance, but because the brain has assigned it. It has decided this person matters before evidence exists, before shared history, before truth. In this early stage, imagination fills the gap. The brain is not responding to who the person is, only to how they feel. Potential becomes more powerful than reality. Silence becomes depth. Distance becomes mystery. Small moments feel amplified, because the brain is rewarding attention with emotion. Nothing about this is accidental, and nothing about it is foolish. The first spark is the brain doing what it has always done, searching for connection using patterns it already knows. It feels like magic. It feels like chance. But beneath the surface, it is memory reaching forward, hoping this time the feeling will lead somewhere safe. And so the story begins, not with love, but with recognition that feels like destiny. Attraction does not begin in the present. It arrives carrying history. Long before a crush forms, the brain has already learned what closeness feels like. Not love in words, but love in sensations. Warmth, distance, inconsistency, safety, or silence. These early emotional experiences become template. Quiet reference points stored without language. The brain does not remember them as memories. It remembers them as feelings. When someone new enters life, the brain does not ask, "Is this person good for you?" It asks something simpler and older. Does this feel familiar? Familiarity is powerful. Even when it is painful, even when it once felt confusing. If emotional closeness once came mixed with uncertainty, the brain may later mistake uncertainty for attraction. If attention once had to be earned, the brain may lean toward those who offer it unpredictably. Not because it wants suffering, but because it recognizes the pattern. This is how the past echoes forward. A tone of voice can awaken comfort. Emotional distance can feel magnetic. The brain is not chasing the person, it is chasing resolution. A chance to rewrite an old emotional story with a different ending. This is why some crushes feel intense without reason. Why logic struggles to intervene. The pull is not about the present moment alone. It is about unfinished emotional learning. The brain believes it has found something important, not someone new, but a familiar emotional landscape. And so attraction deepens, not because of who the person is, but because of what they unconsciously represent. The past does not shout. It whispers. And the brain listens more closely than awareness ever realizes. When a crush takes hold, the brain changes its rhythm. Thoughts return to the same person again and again, not by choice, but by chemistry. At the center of this experience is dopamine, the brain's reward signal. It is released not only by pleasure, but by anticipation. Uncertainty strengthens it. Small interactions, delayed messages, brief eye contact. Each becomes a possibility, and the brain responds with heightened focus. Attention sharpens. Memory intensifies. The person begins to feel important simply because the brain has marked them as a source of emotional reward. Oxytocin quietly joins in, creating a sense of closeness even without real intimacy. It blurs boundaries between imagination and connection. The brain fills in missing information, building emotional meaning from limited data. This is not deception, it is efficiency. The brain is designed to predict, not to wait. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. The more the person is thought about, the more easily the mind returns to them. This loop feels like attachment, even when no bond has formed. Biology creates the illusion of depth before experience can confirm it. In this state, objectivity softens. Flaws fade. Ambiguity feels romantic. The brain is not assessing reality. It is sustaining emotional momentum. A crush is not madness. It is the brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. Turn attention into meaning and possibility into feeling, long before certainty ever arrives. As attraction deepens, a quiet tension begins to form. One part of the mind feels pulled forward, while another watches from a distance. Wanting is emotional. It lives in sensation, imagination, and hope. It focuses on how something feels, not on what it is. Knowing, however, is slower. It notices patterns. It recognizes inconsistency. It senses when attention is uneven or when closeness remains just out of reach. This is where inner conflict emerges. The brain continues to chase emotional reward, while awareness starts asking harder questions. Why does longing grow stronger in absence? Why does uncertainty feel more gripping than reassurance? The answers are uncomfortable, so the brain resists them. Letting go would mean losing not just a person, but a possibility. A version of connection the mind has already rehearsed. And so the brain negotiates. It minimizes red flags. It romanticizes distance. It holds onto moments that support the story it wants to believe. This is not self-deception. It is emotional protection. The brain prefers familiar longing over unfamiliar peace. In this space between wanting and knowing, attraction feels intense and confusing. The heart leans forward. The mind hesitates, and the nervous system remains suspended, waiting for certainty that may never arrive, yet struggling to release the hope that keeps the feeling alive. Clarity rarely arrives all at once. It enters softly, almost unnoticed. It begins when the emotional noise quiets just enough for a different question to surface. Not why do I want this, but what is this actually giving me? The brain starts observing its own patterns. The rush feels familiar, the longing predictable, and slowly the intensity loses some of its mystery. This moment is not disappointment. It is recognition, a subtle understanding that the attraction was built more on anticipation than presence, more on imagination than mutual depth. The person remains the same, but the story surrounding them changes. The brain begins to see the difference between emotional stimulation and emotional nourishment. What once felt magnetic now feels draining. What once felt exciting now feels unsteady. There is no sudden detachment, only a soft shift in perspective. This clarity does not erase the crush. It reframes it. It allows space between feeling and identity. Attraction becomes something observed rather than obeyed. And in that space, something new appears, not loss but relief. The mind realizes it is no longer chasing a feeling. It is beginning to understand it. When understanding settles in, attraction begins to change shape. Not through force, but through awareness. The brain learns by association. What it once linked to excitement alone now becomes linked to consequence. Emotional patterns that were once automatic start to slow. Familiarity loses its grip when it is no longer mistaken for meaning. This is not the end of attraction, it is its evolution. The nervous system begins responding differently to closeness. Calm starts to feel noticeable. Consistency feels less boring, more grounding. The brain, once drawn to intensity, begins recognizing safety as a form of connection rather than its absence. Old patterns do not disappear. They soften. The mind no longer chases unresolved feelings as urgently. It becomes curious instead of compelled. Attraction becomes less about reenacting the past and more about responding to the present. This shift is quiet. There is no dramatic closure. Only a subtle recalibration, where the brain updates its definition of connection and desire slowly aligns with emotional steadiness rather than emotional hunger. Something is not lost here. Something is integrated. A crush eventually leaves its traces, not as regret, but as reflection. The brain remembers the pattern, the pull, the longing, and the lessons embedded within it. Even after intensity fades, what remains is understanding. A quiet awareness of how desire is shaped, not purely by who someone is, but by what the mind has learned to seek. Familiarity, anticipation, memory, and emotion leave their subtle marks, teaching the nervous system what feels magnetic and why. Attraction, in its essence, becomes a mirror reflecting old patterns, unmet needs, and emotional truths. It shows what the mind longs for, what the heart hopes to feel, and what the self is still learning to recognize. In the end, a crush is never wasted. It is a signal, a shadow, a whisper, a quiet teacher guiding the mind to understand itself and the delicate landscapes of human connection. It is not about love found. It is about self-discovered.